When we think about using the web, we need to acknowledge that what appears on the web changes a lot. Web pages are updated frequently and irregularly, and often not by scholars. Quality sources can often be accessed via a number of different databases and interfaces, such as those found on the Door Library website. Depending on the type of literature you access, you will follow all quoting rules, be they for poetry, a novel, the Bible, a journal, etc. And there are videos discussing all of those situations. The only place an electronic source gets tricky is on the Works Cited page. Because of the transient nature of web access sources, you need to record the date that you access the source. Now, URLs are no longer necessary on your Works Cited entry unless the information cannot be found otherwise, or unless your instructor requires it. So, if you need to include the URL, you put it after the date of access plus a period and a space. You enclose it in angle brackets. And if it doesn't fit on your line, you break it only where there is a single slash or a double slash. Here's what a Works Cited entry for a work found only on the web would look like. First of all, you have the name of the author, the compiler, the editor, etc., with, of course, last name, comma, first name, followed by a period. Next, you include the title of the work italicized or in quotes if it's part of a larger work, followed by a period. Then you have the title of the web page, italicized, followed by a period. The version or the edition, the publisher or the sponsor of the site. If none is available, you use a capital N, lowercase p in italics, followed by a comma. Then you have the date of publication with the day, the month abbreviated, and the year. If there is no date, you use italicized lowercase n period d period, and the date is followed by a period. And then you have the medium of publication, in this case the web. And finally, the date of access with the day, month abbreviated, and year, followed by the period. Now, if a URL is required, this is where you would place it. And of course, it would be followed by a period as well. So let's say I'm doing some research on the mummies in Chile's Atacama Desert. And I found what looks like a decent web page here. And so I want to use it. So let's see how I would cite it on my Works Cited page. First of all, I'm going to need a name. Hopefully there's a name attached to it. And sure enough, right there, Mark Miller, we have the title, the name of the author. So that's a good sign. The title of the article is very clearly listed here. 7,000-year-old Chinchorro mummies are turning gelatinous. That sounds exciting. The name of the website is Ancient Origins. So I'm 3 for 3. Now I need to get the version or the edition. Now typically the version or the edition would be listed up here in an area that's called the masthead. And I don't see one. So I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. Sometimes it's listed way at the bottom. And again, no version or edition listed here. So I can just skip that because, like I told you before, it's uncommon. The publisher or the sponsor of the site. And I don't see the publisher or the sponsor down here and up here or up here. And when I go on this About Us part, I get information about the Ancient Origins, their goals, their contact information, but it seems to be a self-published site. So there's no publisher, so that would be an NP situation. Then the date of publication, and I did see that somewhere. And there it is, right in front of Mr. Miller's name. So I got that, and then of course the medium of publication. And then the date of access is whenever I accessed it. So how would that look on our Works Cited entry? So we would begin with, let's see here, make this a little bigger so you can see it. Author's last name, comma, first name, period. And then the title of the work, 7,000-year-old Chinchorro mummies, etc. And in parentheses, or excuse me, in quotation marks. And then the title of the site, italicized, Ancient Origins. All right. right, and then there was no publisher, so keeping italics, I do a N, capital N, lowercase p with periods around them. And that was followed by a comma, and then it was the date of publication was the 11th of March. That's the approved MLA abbreviation for March 2015. It was a web resource, and I accessed it on the 11th of August 2015. So now all I have to do is my hanging indent, and my site, my works cited entry, excuse me, is good to go. Now, if I did have to include that URL, I would just go back to the web page. It's right up here in the address bar. I'd Control-C, copy it. I'd come over here, and I'd Control-V or paste it. Now, you'll notice that sometimes when you copy a web address, it forces itself onto it on its own line because it sees everything in it as just one word. This seems to be working for me because these hyphens seem to be working as line breaks. But if for whatever reason they didn't, I could break my my URL here, or I could break it here. Maybe even if I needed to, I could break it right there. So there's 3 different places where I could break it in order to make it aesthetically more pleasing. And of course, I would finish the whole thing with a period. If I'm using an ordinary search engine such as Google and I find a web page that is published periodically, such as an online journal, I need to include information about the version or the edition. Let's look at another example. I found an article by a man named Peter Goldman, and the article is called Shakespeare's Gentle Apocalypse, The Tempest. So I've got my title in quotation marks, and now I need to include the title of the journal. The online journal, Anthropoetics, the Journal of Generative Anthropology. There we go. And I need to include information about the version or the edition. And so this was the spring version, so I typed spring, and it was published by UCLA. And it was published in 2013, so there's my date, excuse me, and then it was accessed on the web on the 11th of August 2015. So that's what it would look like if you had to include a if you found an online journal and you had a version and you had a publisher and you need to include that information on your works cited. Now let's say that I find something in an online database like the ones available on the Door Library site. Usually these sources are originally published in print form. Thus you would follow all the rules for citing a periodical, except that you omit the medium of original publication. Now there's a lot to include in this type of an entry. First of all, the author's last name and first name followed by a period. Then the title of the article in quotation marks with a period inside the marks. The name of the periodical italicized, followed by a space. Then the series name or number if it's relevant, and this again is not common. It's going to be unusual to find that. Then the volume number for a scholarly journal, followed by a period, and you will always have volume numbers. The issue number for a scholarly journal, and that would be followed by a space. Then the year of publication, which you're going to put in parentheses and follow it with a colon. Then the page numbers. Now, if the page number, if it's just continuous pagination, let's say your article was from page 38 to 94, you would do 38-94. But if they're not continuous, so if it went from 38 to 44 and then it was continued on page 89, you would give only the first page with a plus sign. If there are no page numbers, you use in italics N period PAG period. Then you give the title of the database in italics, and then the medium of publication, in this case web, the date of access with the day, the month, and the year, and then if your instructor requires the URL, you give the URL. So I found an article about Shakespeare's use of the natural world, which I think would be helpful as I write my paper. Let's do the works cited entry. All right, the article was written by H.R. Corson. So Corson, comma, H period, R period, just how he does it. And then the title, Shakespeare in the Sticks. And then I found that in an awesome publication called Shakespeare Quarterly. And the version, the volume number and the issue number was volume number 36, period, issue 5, space, and it was published in 1985. And then I have my colon. It was on pages 644 to 647, period. Now I got to get to that database information. So now I need the name of the database italicized, and this was JSTOR. You future English majors will love JSTOR. Followed by a period. It's a web resource. August 11th was my access date. 2015. Period. And if my instructor required the URL, I would plop it in right here, followed by a period. And that's how it would look.